Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Randana Shodanandana Bhajana Randana Yashodanandana Bhajana Randana Nana Bhajana Randana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Mr. Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtotar Tata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtotar Tata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I don't hear the fan and the door is closed. So just crack it a bit. On this 26th day of January 2021, SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're beginning a new chapter, chapter 7, entitled Knowledge of the Absolute. Text number 1, page 303. Shri Bhagavano Vacha Maya Saktamanapata Yogam Yunjan Marashayah Asankshayang Samagram Mam Yatagya Satitachinu. Shri Bhagavano Vacha Maya Saktamanapata Yogam Yunjan Marashayah Asankshayang Samagram Mam Yatagya Satitachinu. Shri Bhagavano Vacha Maya Saktamanapata Yogam Yunjan Marashayah Asankshayang Samagram Mam Yatagya Satitachinu. Shri Bhagavano Vacha Maya Saktamanapata Yogam Yunjan Marashayah Asankshayang Samagram Mam Yata gyasasi tat trinu. Sri Bhagavan Vacha, the Supreme Lord said, Mai to me, asakta manaha, mind attached, parta, O son of Pita, yogam, self-realization, yunjan, practicing, mat ashrayaha, in consciousness of me, Krishna consciousness, asankshayam, without doubt, samagram, completely, mam, me, yata, how, gyasyasi, you can know, tat, that, shinu, try to hear. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Now hear, O son of Pita, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Purport. In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the nature of Krishna consciousness is fully described. Krishna is full in all opulences, and how he manifests such opulences is described herein. Also, 4 kinds of fortunate people who become attached to Krishna, and 4 kinds of unfortunate people who never take to Krishna, are described in this chapter. In the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, the living entity has been described as non-material spirit soul capable of elevating himself to self-realization by different types of yogas. At the end of the 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest form of all yoga. By concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely, but not otherwise. Impersonal Brahma Jyoti, or localized Paramatma realization, is not perfect knowledge of the absolute truth, because it is partial. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is ultimate knowledge beyond any doubts. Different types of yoga are only stepping stones on the path of Krishna consciousness. One who takes directly to Krishna consciousness automatically knows about Brahma Jyoti, the Brahma Jyoti, and Paramatma in full. By practice of Krishna consciousness yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations with paraphernalia. One should therefore begin yoga practice as directed in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna, the Supreme, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. The Lord therefore says to Arjuna, Tat Shanu, or hear from me. No one can be a greater authority than Krishna, and therefore by hearing from him one receives the greatest opportunity to become a perfectly Krishna-conscious person. One has therefore to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna, and not from a non-devotee upstart, puffed up with academic education. Page 304. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this process of understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is described in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto as follows. You got it? Alex? Okay, I'll say you say. Shrindvatang Sukata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanaha Vidyantaksto Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktim Bhavati Naishtiki Tadadadastamo Bhava Kamalo Bhadayashchaye Cheta Eta Anavidham Sitam Sattve Prasidati Evam Prasanna Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate Vidyate Vidya Grantish Chidyante Sarva Sankshayah. I'm sorry. Chidyante Sarva Sankshayah Chiyante Chasya Karmani Drishta Evatmanishware. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lusts and avarice are diminished. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by the devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of asankshayam samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, Personality of Godhead. Bhagavatam 1:2:17-21. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, it's very important to see how the last chapter results in this chapter. The end of the chapter is this famous verse, Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavam bhajate yomam samayukta tamomataha. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So, this is a great relief for Arjuna. He's always thinking of Krishna. So he doesn't have to worry about going off to the Himalayas and working hard and doing the impossible, controlling the mind artificially, so to speak. But still, the mind has to be controlled, and it has to be fixed on Krishna. And this verse talks about that. The first verse, the verse we just read, asakta manaprata. Now I'm going to tell you how you can naturally have your mind attached to me. Now, if one's mind is attached to Krishna, what's the problem with controlling it? That you want to think of Krishna. How, you see what I'm saying? In other words, the whole problem is solved if the mind is spontaneously attracted to Krishna. Now it's not. It's diverted in so many different things. But Krishna will explain in this chapter how one, in one's ordinary life, and seeing and feeling and tasting and smelling and hearing, one can see the Lord, even in the material world. That's the first lesson. He's going to describe the different material energies, how he's the source of them, and how he's also the interaction of the energies that we see. Rasoham apsukonteya. I'm the taste of water, I'm the light of the sun and the moon, I'm the sound and ether. When are you not either hearing something in the ether or tasting something? So if you can remember those, then you're seeing Krishna in this material world, in your everyday life. So this is a practical system by which one can, even an ordinary person, can become Krishna conscious by following this instruction. And as Prabhupada describes in this purport, it all begins with hearing. This famous series of verses here, 1 to 17 to 21. You've all seen that little pamphlet, The Reservoir of Pleasure? Starts out with a lecture on this first verse. Shrindvatam Sukata Krishna. That's the source of that. So this is a wonderful little lesson right in the second chapter. We made a book of Prabhupada's lectures on this verse and the ones leading up to it, beginning with what is the Supreme Dharma, the verse we should know. Savai Sang Paro Dharma. Not yet. It's important. That's the whole section. You know that one. And it culminates in these 5 verses. The whole idea is that that Dharma is real Dharma, is the ultimate Dharma, which results in uninterrupted, unmotivated devotional service to Krishna. Unmotivated means no material motivation in the ISKCON lingo. So it all keys on, as we progress in those verses, and there's a book called Dharma, the Way of Transcendence. You may have seen it, based on that these verses. Very important lesson. It culminates in hearing. You got to get an attachment for hearing. How do you get an attachment for hearing? By serving the devotees, pure devotees, and then one can sharpen the sword of remembrance of Krishna. It all comes down to the same thing. The yogis, the Ashtanga yogis, are trying to focus the mind on Krishna at every moment in samadhi, right? That's what the bhaktas achieve more naturally by hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, all the 9 processes. But it all comes down to this key of attaining the constant remembrance of Krishna. So that's what Krishna is saying in this verse, that now hear, O son of Krishna, hear, Tatshanu. That Tatshanu is what Prabhupada is describing, Shrinvatam Sukata. When you're hearing Krishna Katha, Krishna in the heart purifies us of abhadras, the impurities. So, Marashriya, Prabhupada often in his lectures, as I mentioned, you weren't here, that he gave so many lectures on this verse. If you go through, if you like to listen to Prabhupada's lectures, you get to 7.1, and it goes at least 12 different lectures on that one verse. He was in India, I think, going to different places where he would speak on this verse. So very important verse. And this word manashriya, our commentators, manashriya means taking shelter of me, but it also means taking shelter of one who has taken shelter of me. In other words, it's taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. And then without doubt, one can know me in full. Now, how can we know Krishna in full? As we heard this morning or recently, even Krishna doesn't know himself in full because his qualities are always increasing, So we can know Krishna to the fullest extent that we can know him, from zero knowledge, from complete ignorance. We can know Krishna in such a way that our bhakti increases. Because without knowledge, you can't become attached to someone. So understanding Krishna's greatness and also his intimate pastimes with his devotees, which are so all attractive for the heart, both of those knowledges are available for one who practices the process mentioned in this verse, in this chapter. So let's see some of the points. So Prabhupada, as he says toward in Tatshanu, that's the last part of this verse, and then Prabhupada gives this whole section here. So let's just run through those because it's such an important lesson. As I mentioned, there's a whole series of verses beginning with the definition of real Dharma, and it culminates in this hearing, the purification that comes from hearing. So, by serving the spiritual master and bona fide spiritual master, regulated, one acquires more and more taste for hearing. Ruchi. This what is the verse? It says, Sushusho Shadadhanasya Vasudeva Katha Ruchi. Ruchi, taste, for Vasudeva Katha, same as Krishna Katha. By the Shushusho, by this ardent hearing, careful hearing, attentive hearing, become purified and your taste increases. And with that taste, then the next verse is the first verse in the series. So, Srinvatam Sakata Krishna. Now, Prabhupada makes the point. He uses this very phrase. Krishna is in the nominative here. In other words, he's the subject. He's the actor. He sees in the heart, Riddhi Andaksto, situated in the heart. He understands, this living entity is hearing about me. And by his mercy, he then vidunoti suritsatam. He cleanses away the abhadras, lust, anger, greed, etc. The more that we hear properly and put those lessons into activity, we'll become more and more pure. And how does that nashta prayeshu abhadreshu? These abhadras, these unwanted things, all these attachments and material affection. Prabhupada uses the word affection often to mean being affected by. Watch for it when you read Prabhupada's books. It doesn't always mean love, It means being affected by. So, Nashta Prayashu means that Prabhupada says sometimes 70%. Prayu means almost all, not all. There's a certain state. The abhadras are destroyed by Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. Now, in the Bhagavatam itself, Prabhupada makes it very clear that there's 2 kinds of Bhagavats. There's a Bhagavatam and the Mahabhagavat, the person Bhagavat, and the book Bhagavat. Bhagavat means in relationship to Bhagavan. You see the difference. Those long and short A's make all the difference. You know, watch for them, carefully pronounce them, and understand. So Bhagavatam means it's in relationship to Bhagavan. Srimad Bhagavatam, therefore it's called Bhagavad. A Bhagavat is a person who's in relation to Bhagavan, pure devotee, often called Mahabhagavat. So by serving both of them, always, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, then these abhadras are almost completely destroyed. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke, the Uttama Shloka is the name for Krishna, he is glorified in the best of songs. Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki, your bhakti becomes Naishtiki, means that's the same Nishta platform, very determined and at a certain level of purity and faith. Then, tada, the lower modes of nature, rajas and tamas, passion and ignorance, and kama, lobha, and their concomitants, lust and greed, etc. As in mode of passion and ignorance, and lust and greed become very powerful. Chaita etanavada, your consciousness is not affected by them anymore, because you've transcended, you're in the mode of goodness and getting into pure goodness. And one becomes stitam sattve, someone becomes situated in goodness, prasidati, and very happy. And then he emphasizes in the next verse, evam, thus, prasanna manaso, your mind is you're very joyful. Prasanna is become Brahmabhuta Prasannatma. The natural joyful state of the soul becomes manifest. We should always remember that our natural state is bliss all the time. This up and down, little happiness and all kinds of distress and anxiety, that's unnatural. That's part of our punishment for leaving the spiritual world, turning our back on Krishna. So it's characterized by very joyfulness in the mind, prasanna manaso, Bhagavad Bhakti as a result of performing devotional service. And one Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam, one gets realized knowledge of the truth of Bhagavan. It means that direct perception, rather than you know of something, you know it by direct perception. So that is a very important point. And Mukta Sangasya, you're liberated at that point. You're liberated from all attachment to this material world, this progressive. And then he gives a state at the end here. At that state, all the knots in the heart are cut asunder. Knots in the heart are these attachments that we've developed over many, many years. Keep us bound here. They're cut. Chidyante sarvasankhya, chidyate is also cut. Cut to pieces all your doubts. There's no doubts. How can there be doubts when you're perceiving Krishna directly? And chiyante chasya karmani, and all of your karma is eradicated. That's been cleansed away by Krishna. And drishta eva atmani ishvare, which Prabhupada translates as, he explains, is one sees oneself and one's master. In other words, you see God in the heart and externally, and you see yourself and you understand your relationship with Krishna. It's Swarup Siddhi. You're awakened again to your original nature. So the whole program is right here. So there's nothing lost. You can see that, full absorption in Krishna is certainly there. What was spoken of in the previous chapter is realized here just by hearing and chanting and remembering and so forth. The hearing stands in for the rest of them. So this is a great first verse for the chapter. This is really encouraging. We can practice yoga practically and achieve all the results of the Ashtanga Yoga and more. Any discussion? Okay. Why don't we go on? Text 2. Jnanam teham sa vijnanam idam bhakshyam yasheshataha yajngatva neha bhuyon yaj gatavyam avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. Phenomenal and numinous are basically material and spiritual. Purport. Complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. This is echoed in the 13th chapter. Matter and spirit and the controller of both. That's the source of it. This is transcendental knowledge. The Lord wants to explain the above-mentioned system of knowledge because Arjuna is Krishna's confidential devotee and friend. In the beginning of the 4th chapter, this explanation was given by the Lord, and that is again confirmed here. Complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotee of the Lord in disciplic succession directly from the Lord. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to know the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes, and the only object for meditation in all types of yoga practice. When the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. The Vedas, the Mundaka Upanishad 113 say, Kasmin nu, this should be Kasmin nu. Bhagavad Gita sarvamidam vigyatam bhavatiti. So, this is more encouragement. I'm going to speak to you not just knowledge, but also vijnana, realized knowledge. If you follow carefully, you'll get direct experience. Scientific knowledge, probably that's scientific experience. And nothing further will remain to be known. So we can never know everything like Krishna knows everything. That's impossible. But we can know what's necessary for us to know about the Lord, the creator of everything, this world, who we are, where we fit. In other words, what we need in order to be reestablished in our eternal loving relation with Krishna and leave this material world and go back to Godhead. That's all we really need to know. How can we know everything? Krishna himself, because he's always expanding, he doesn't know everything, but he knows everything that's happened. As it says in this chapter, I know everything that's happened in the past, everything that's happening now, and everything that'll happen in the future. But me, no one knows. So we can't aspire to that kind of knowledge. We don't need it. But when he says here, there will remain nothing further for you that you need to know. If you understand this chapter, and you follow the rules and regulations, Krishna will enlighten you with everything you need to know to return back to Godhead and perfect your life. So that's what's being promised here. And, Prabhupada is always giving us the bhakti dimension. Why is he speaking to Arjuna? As he explains here from the 4th chapter. Because Arjuna is a confidential devotee and friend of Krishna. So we can also become like that. The more that we perform a sincere devotional service, Krishna will be pleased to enlighten us within the heart and to give us the inspiration to receive the knowledge that's been given by our authorities. And it'll mean so much more. Every devotee's experience, when you read the Bhagavad Gita after some time in the movement, there's all kinds of other things that you understand than when you first read it. And it keeps going like that. It doesn't matter how long you're in. There's always new revelation. That's the nature of transcendental knowledge. It's ever fresh, just like Krishna. So that's what keeps us enlivened in devotional service. It's never dull. It's never like, although externally we're doing the same things, chanting the same mantras and reading the same book. And we've gone through this in my 31 years, 10 times at least, But it's not like boring, This is knowledge about the most essential things you need to know in your life. And just as Krishna, is ever fresh, that's, what is it? Nabha-yovana. He's an ever fresh youth. So there's always some new adventure every day. There's something new to learn, And if you're in the right consciousness, it's most enlivening form of lifestyle you can imagine. Okay, so now a description of how rare it is, how rare this success in Krishna consciousness is. Manushanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam abhisiddhanam kaschin mam veti tattvataha. All right, a 30-second interlude, because this is pronunciation of the Sanskrit. Double consonants, which you find tons of them. In this one verse, what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4 examples of double consonants. The double D's, a D, a DH, which is basically double consonant, and the double T's, you see that at the end, which you find very often. Now, as soon as you see a double consonant, it means that the previous syllable is what we call heavy. It gets a quarter note's worth rather than an eighth note. So it's not veti, It's veti, tattvataha. Kaschin mam veti tattvataha. We have a tendency to import our English, into that. It's pretty good, double T's. No. And the same thing with the double D's. We have less problem with that. But just keep that in mind. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Purport. There are various grades of men, and out of many thousands, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try to know what is the self, what is the body, and what is the absolute truth. Generally, mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. And hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. The first 6 chapters of the Gita are meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge, in understanding the self, the super self, and the process of realization by jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and discrimination of the self from matter. However, Krishna can be known only by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, for this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Person, but at the same time, he is beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. The yogis and jnanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his followers do not accept Krishna as such, for it is very difficult to know Krishna even though one has transcendental realization of impersonal Brahman. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the primeval Lord, Govinda. Ishwarak Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. It is very difficult for the non-devotees to know him. Although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, they cannot practice it. If the path of bhakti is so easy as the non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti practiced by unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti may be easy. But when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. Srila Rupa Goswami writes in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 12101, I say you say, Shruti Smriti Paranadi Pancharatra Vidhimbana Aikantiki Hare Bhakti Utpatai Kalpate. Devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. It is not possible for the Brahman-realized impersonalist or the Paramatma-realized yogi to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the son of Mother Yashoda or the charioteer of Arjuna. Even the great demigods are sometimes confused about Krishna. Muyanti yat suryaha. Mam tu vedana Krishna. No one knows me as I am, the Lord says. And if one does know him, then samahatma sudurlabha. Such a great soul is very rare. Therefore, unless one practices devotional service to the Lord, one cannot know Krishna as he is, tattvataha, even though one is a great scholar or philosopher. Only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities in Krishna. His being the cause of all causes, his omnipotence and opulence, and his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotees. He is the last word in Brahman realization, and the devotees alone can realize him as he is. Therefore it is said, I say you say, Atak Shri Krishna Namadi Nabave Grayam Indriyai Sevam Mukehi Jifadao Svayameva Sparatjadaha. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service unto him. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-2-234. Now Prabhupada quotes from the Brahma Samhita here at the beginning of the second paragraph, Ishvara Padma Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadadada Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. So this is a really important verse, as we hear every morning when Maharaj gets ready to leave. He usually chants this verse. Ishvara Padma Krishna, the Supreme Controller, is Krishna. Satchid Ananda Vigraha, he has a form that is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. Anadir means Anadi? No beginning. No beginning. Adir, he is the beginning. He's the beginning of all, but he has no beginning. And then Sarva Karana Karanam. Sarva means all, and Karana means cause. So we have the cause of all causes. In other words, he is that uncaused cause that all the Western theologists are looking for. I think it was St. Thomas Aquinas that was defined God as he was the uncaused cause. But we had that right. So this, who is that? It's Govinda. It's Krishna. Krishna Govinda. So to come to that conclusion is not easy. But we're in the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampadaya, and it's a Brahma's verse, part of the Brahma Samhita. So the conclusion is there way back when. And it's certainly reiterated in the Bhagavad Gita and all the books we have. So the first thing is that it's rare for any human being to even strive for perfection. And we can certainly see that all around us. People don't even know what perfection is. They try to achieve something in the way of, usually they're struggling just to survive, or if they're, very fortunate, they can try to make a lot of money or fame or something like that. But it's also, self-defeating, because it's wrapped up in this material world, which is temporary. It's like you build Prabhupada gives an example in one of his lectures. You build a house, at great expense, and then you set fire to it. Why would you do that? But it's going to happen anyway. This body itself is going to be burned down, destroyed just by time. So all of the construction that you build up in a particular life, human life, it all comes to dust. Prabhupada would quote this all the time. Mrityu sarvaharashchaham. This is from the 10th chapter. Krishna is saying, I am this, I am that. So he says, I am death. I take everything away at death. So he gives the example. He gives the conclusion of that people sometimes say, "Show me God." Most people don't care. They're not considered. But those who are into yoga, can you show me God? So this is a way of seeing God. Everybody's going to die. If you don't try to see him in his all attractive threefold bending form as a blooming youth, by devotion, then you'll see him as death. He's all powerful. He's going to take everything away from you. You can't stop. And that's painful. That's not how we want to see Krishna. So there are a few, Manusha and Sahasra, out of thousands of human beings, a few strive for perfection. Perfection here is generally defined as self-realization, at least understanding the spirit, right? But that's yatata. Yatata means striving. It's not easy, to do that. We have this problem again. Try to get him to close the door. So. I think they did it. All right. So this word strive is very important. A sannyasi is called a yati, one who strives. Yeah. And in that famous verse, Labdvasa Durlamamidam Bahusambhavante, that you've achieved the human form of life after many, many births through all different kinds of species. And human life is rare. And it has one great quality. Artadam, Manusham. The word Manusham is here, right at the beginning. Manusham Artadam. You can actually achieve the goal, Artadam, the Swarta, the goal of the soul, rather than all of these fake artists. But it's temporary like all others. So one has to be dear, one has to be thoughtful. And then the result of that thoughtfulness is Turnam Yateta. Notice that word Yateta. It's the same word as Yatati and Yatatam. One has to strive. If you're intelligent, it says quickly, without delay. Turnam Yateta Napateta Namitya. As long as you're still alive and you have your senses and your wits about you, in other words, you're still breathing, strive for what? Nikshayasa, the ultimate good, rather than these temporary, fleeting fool's gold. We call it fool's gold. It looks like gold, but it isn't. Phantasmagoria, the will-o'-the-wisp of success in this life. Give all that up. Be Vira, intelligent, and strive for the ultimate good, which is self-realization, God-realization, going back to Godhead for a permanent life of existence, knowledge, and bliss. So, even one is a siddha. He understands something about the self. He's self-realized. But even among them, hardly any of them know me in truth. Now, this word tattvataha appears 3 times in the Gita, actually 4 times in the Gita. In the verse in the 18th chapter, twice. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi tattvataha. Tato mam tattvato gyatva vishadeda tadanantadam. That one can know me in truth only by bhakti. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi. And knowing me in truth in this way, one can enter into the spiritual world. It appears in the 4th chapter. This is one of the most quoted verses, like second only to Sarvadharman, I think. Janma karma te me divyam, evam yo veti, tattvataha. Chakra deha puna janma naiti mamati sojada. That if one understands in truth the transcendental nature of my birth and my activities, my karma, my lila, then upon leaving this body, it doesn't come back again, but comes to me. Such an important word, the truth. And here we have it here in this verse also. So, because why does he have to emphasize that? Because it's so common to understand Krishna in untruth. Little of this, little of that. Yeah, I know. My grandmother taught me about his baby Leela. I know he took birth. But just like I remember, it's typical. Devotees who spend a lot of time preaching in college and things are confronted with this. I was waiting at a baggage carousel in an airport once. I was dressed as a devotee, and someone comes up and, how can you worship a god who dances with other men's wives? Typical. I don't think it was. No, it wasn't. But they knew something about Krishna. So what could I tell them? I didn't explain it in that. But I remember hearing about Radhanath Swami having, this conversation. Do you know Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita? In other words, a little bit about that, but try to understand his, glories and power and infinite, like that, before you start making judgments, basically. So that's the problem. People know a little of this, little of that, and that's not in truth, and they make a judgment. Everyone wants to make their own judgment on Krishna. That's why, Bhagavad Gita has to be understood thoroughly. And then, and going through the first 9 cantos before you come to the 10th canto, all the glories of Krishna, the different incarnations, the power, the infallibility, and then you can understand, how pure, absolutely pure, is Krishna's relationship with gopis and his friends and everyone else. So that's what it means to understand Krishna in truth. Very rare, and we can join that rare group, if we try, and this chapter will help us. So let's see, what else is he? Oh, the Shruti Smriti Puranadi. So, focusing on this rarity of people who are serious about understanding Krishna, but sometimes people will take up bhakti that really is just a shadow of bhakti. In India, so many what we call upasampradayas in Bengal area means the let me get rid of this. Okay. Is that they, it's difficult to really practice, and surrender to 4 regular principles and follow the way that's been handed down. But it seems so attractive. You can feel some of the power of Krishna Kanda just by chanting. But it's easy, especially in Lord Chaitanya's line, to get into just wanting to relish the most intimate pastimes and stuff like that. So that's the Prakrita Sahajiyas. It's important to know what these words mean. Prakrita means materialistic. Sahajiya means those who take things easily. Much easier to practice bhakti if you don't have to worry about any rules and regulations. We'll get together and, in the evening, and we'll have a nice kirtan, and we'll talk about Radha and Krishna, and who knows what will happen after that. No books, no regulations, no shastra, like that. So that's what this is about. Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancha Vidhin Vina, without any reference to the vidhis. We're meant to be practicing here sadhana bhakti, which is sadhana means a practice under strict regulation, and or known as vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Vaidhi means according to rules and regulations. That's what the word is, vidhi. The vidhis, the rules and regulations set down in the Shruti and the Smriti and the Puranas, etc., such as Pancharatra. Pancharatra is the rules and regulations for the deity worship, and the Shruti we have, Vedanta Sutra. The Smriti is books that come after it. This is like the Puranas are part of it, and the Bhagavad Gita here. The Itihasa is kind of Smriti. It's a history, like the Ramayana. So all of them contain invaluable instructions. So vidhis. Without reference to any of these vidhis in these books, this so-called one-pointed Hari Bhakti is just utpataya, is a disturbance. It's a disturbance. Misleading. Prabhupada was fighting a battle. He was on the battlefield. Not only against people's just gross ignorance, but against the so-called teachers of yoga and bhakti who are using Bhagavad Gita for their own purposes, misapplying it. Even he would criticize Mahatma Gandhi, who he was an ardent follower in his youth, because he tried to find non-violence in the Bhagavad Gita. Now you can find the word non-violence. It's there amongst the elements of knowledge, and I think the saintly qualities at the beginning of the 16th chapter, But to try to think that's the real purpose of the Gita, to bring it's ridiculous, because it ends up with Arjun taking up his bow and arrow and starting to fight. How can But that was what he needed to prove, and the Gita is so popular, So this is cheating, and it's a disturbance in society, and Prabhupada is, fought the battle constantly, and these books are an important part of the ammunition. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, can I ask?
Oh, okay, yes, please. Okay, go ahead, ask.
So, please accept my humble obeisance.
Hare Krishna, Ghosh Prabhupada.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. What is Sahajya means again? Is the Prakrut Sahajya you mentioned, Prabhu?
I'm sorry, what was that? Oh, Sahajya. Prakrita Sahajya? Is it, Prakrita Sahajyas, we call them?
Sahajyas, the one you said.
Yeah, Sahajya means easy. Prakrita means materialistic. So those who try to practice the easy parts of Krishna consciousness, dancing and chanting, which is fine, but it has to be supported by one's understanding of the Shastra. Just like Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya's movement is a perfect combination of the head and the heart. You see? What Prabhupada is saying, that religion without philosophy is often fanaticism, sentimentality or fanaticism. And philosophy without religion is mental speculation. A very famous statement. I forget exactly where it is, but it's here. And so, if you try to ignore the rules and regulations, just like people are attracted, naturally to the nice dancing and chanting, and of course the feasting, But that's a very important part of it. But there has to be an understanding of the Shastra and the rules and regulations to really be able to progress in devotional service. Otherwise, it becomes what we call a farce. It becomes a farce. It's a shadow of real devotional service. So that Prakrita Sahajiyas, they're a class of so-called devotees who just focus on, hearing about the most intimate pastimes of Krishna with the gopis and dancing and chanting, but they're not interested in Bhagavad Gita. They're not interested in the philosophical parts of the Bhagavatam, only in those 5 chapters describing the rasa dance. You understand? And so it's not that they're only over there in India, they're also here. Anywhere where there's real bhakti, there will be people who can't really bring themselves to practice a discipline, but still like Krishna. Now, that's okay, in other words, it's still good. But not that they can, claim that this is the real bhakti, is that it's unfortunately they're unable, they're too fallen, or whatever, for whatever reason, to actually practice strictly. And therefore, that becomes sometimes a threat to the real practice of devotional service. Because they say, well, why undergo all those difficulties? Come with us. You know, we don't have all those rules and regulations. So Prabhupada was always fighting against that, and he's supported constantly by the Shastra. Shastra is here, right. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami is warning against that in this verse we read. Is that okay?
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu, very nice. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
So it's a little late, and I'm going to have to. So we'll pick that up tomorrow on text 4. Mahatma Gandhi. Do we have the mic? No mic. Here, take this one.
Yeah, you were saying how Mahatma Gandhi, he was trying to like squeeze whatever nonviolence as the main principle from Bhagavad Gita. I was reading from this book, Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava from Bhakti Goswami, and there's a section on there where Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he's dealing with different groups and different people, and one of those persons were Mahatma Gandhi. And yeah, some things were mentioned about Mahatma Gandhi, how he accepted the Bhagavad Gita as like allegorical. He actually didn't accept it. And also Krishna, he felt that, okay, Krishna was existing, but after Krishna left, they kind of pushed him to the level of God. So he really didn't have any faith. And also one time they invited him to the Gaudiya Math to meet Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and so he asked the devotee who invited him, "Oh, is there going to be a cloth spinner there or whatever, like a is that going to be there?" And then the devotee said no, and then Mahatma Gandhi said, "Okay, I don't want to go then." And he said that this cloth spinner, whatever machine thing, he said, not machine, but he said, "This is my Bhagavan." So, yeah, that's my Bhagavan. So yeah, he didn't go. So, anyways.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.